This is Brian with ScreenFiles.com and Postmortem. What I'm looking at today is 2004's The Chronicles of Riddick, which is a really good movie, by the way, but a problematic one. Keep in mind that this movie is a sequel to 2000's Pitch Black, which was a much simpler movie, a much better defined movie than its sequel. And let's look at what I mean by that. 2004's Pitch Black, directed by David Twohy, starred, well, it was actually, and this is an interesting point as well, Pitch Black was actually an ensemble movie. Sure, Vin Diesel was in it. Cole Hauser, a few other actors as well. David Keith. Vin Diesel's character was significant to the story, but so were the others as well. It wasn't a Vin Diesel movie. At least I don't view it that way. Pitch Black very much plays as an ensemble to me. And that's part of, I think, why it works so well. It's not really about any particular character. It's about a bunch of people in a situation, alien, pardon the pun, situation, trying to survive. It's gorgeously shot, it's a clever movie, but it's not a complex movie, and that's okay. It doesn't need to be. It does the job. While The Chronicles of Riddick ups everything. It's a significantly more complex movie. It's production design to death. It's gorgeous to look at, but it's very medieval looking, quite deliberately. And everything about it is to the level. And that's kind of not what Pitch Black was. So, The Chronicles of Riddick, financially, was not successful. And that's a pity. And it could have been. What was needed, I think, was a second movie. Because Chronicles was too much. It was too much compressed into its running time. If there had been a third movie between, if there had been a middle movie between Pitch Black and The Chronicles of Riddick, then you could have better introduced these elements that we're seeing for the first time in The Chronicles of Riddick. So, this second movie would revolve around Riddick after leaving the planet in Pitch Black. And it would cover that type of thing. It would build up the universe that these movies exist in. So that when you have the third movie, which would use the necromongers and that type of stuff, it would not seem so odd and just, I wouldn't say out of place necessarily, more so than just, where is this coming from? There was literally no sign of this, and now? So that's kind of an important element. The Pitch Black movies have always dealt with religion on some level. One of the subplots of the first movie was a bunch of the colonists on a ship were going to New Mecca. The Chronicles of Riddick does that as well, but it's dealing more with the oppressiveness, the manipulativeness of religion. So that aspect remains intact, and I actually think it's a really interesting aspect. I'm glad it stayed. But as I said, Chronicles of Riddick was just too much movie too soon. If they had broken it up, another smaller budget sequel to Pitch Black, dealing primarily with Riddick, but introducing us to all these other elements, these other groups, these other beings, that movie would have been better placed to bring us to The Chronicles of Riddick, which, as I said, was just, it's a gorgeous movie. I enjoy it. I actually like it quite a bit. But it's also bloated, and it's just too much. And that's not to say that a movie that does that is, by definition, going to not be successful. That's not true at all. For instance, and I haven't seen it yet, from what I hear, Aquaman is bloated as you wouldn't believe. A lot of the reviews indicate that. But it's doing quite well. So it's more complex than that in terms of what makes a movie successful or not successful. But at the same time, this movie would have stood a much better chance if it were leaner, a little meaner, and not so much on the world-building scale. Another issue with the Chronicles of Riddick was that in Pitch Black, it was established that Vin Diesel's character, Riddick, was a bad guy. He was not, I mean, he acted good, quote unquote, in that movie, but it was mainly to preserve his own skin, frankly. And that's okay, nothing wrong with that. But in Chronicles, there's talk of him being a bad guy, but you don't actually see it. And that's kind of frustrating, because you introduce him as evil, and they allude to it a lot in Chronicles, but you introduce him as evil in Pitch Black, and in Chronicles of Riddick, he's essentially anti-hero slash hero. He's just not an evil character. If you had introduced a second movie between Pitch Black and the Chronicles of Riddick, then you could have seen him develop as a character. Maybe start shifting away from evil and crime and that type of stuff. But you never see that at all. And that's a problem. Because, as I said, he starts off in the first movie as pretty much a criminal. Though, admittedly, the movie doesn't show you what he did. So, it could be very well the case that he isn't evil and he was being framed. But that's not the impression the movie gives. The movie gives that this is a real badass criminal. And he was on a way to, he was captured, and he was going to be given to wherever or whomever, and the crash happened, getting in the way of those plans. So, a movie between Pitch Black and the Chronicles of Riddick will deal with Riddick being an evil, mean character and slowly turning away from it, not good, towards the anti-hero. It's essentially what you get in the final movie, but you understand why it's happening. With Chronicles, you don't know why it's happening. It just kind of does. And that's kind of a little off-putting. Another thing is this whole Furion angle. This is something, a bit of mythology, not at all present in Pitch Black, and not at all necessary. I don't know, I mean, it's vaguely similar to the Force in Star Wars movies. And I don't know why David Twohy, who I believe also wrote the Chronicles of Riddick, put this aspect in there. It's just not necessary. And it creates a problem which I mentioned earlier. Namely, you're adding all kinds of layer and background and characters without prior introducing them. If you're going to deal with that Furion, again, I don't think it's necessary. But if you're going to do that second movie I'm talking about, between the two, introduce it there. Give us some of his history. Let us know what his background is. Tell us that stuff. So when events happen in the third movie, there's a logic to them. And you're not thinking to yourself, what just happened? Why did that happen? What is with the glowing hand? You don't need that stuff. Frankly, I would not put it in the movie at all. But I would have at least considered a movie between the Chronicles to just see that, to just expand the universe gradually, as opposed to abruptly, which was the case of the Chronicles. But on the whole, as I said, The Chronicles of Riddick is an enjoyable movie. I watched it right after Pitch Black, and my few gripes aside, it's really good. If you haven't seen it, check it out. This is Brian, ScreenFiles.com and Postmortem. Peace.